Okay, so here we're going to do several operations with functions. We have three functions: f of x, which is equal to 5x minus 3, g of x, which is equal to x squared plus 2, and h of x, which is equal to 3 plus x all over 7. So the first question asks, what is f minus h of 4? Now, we're going to use the definition. So this f minus h of 4 simply means to subtract f of 4 minus h of 4. Okay, now, so why don't we do this separately? Well, let's calculate f of 4. Well, f of 4, since this is a function, this simply says plug 4 into every x inside of f. So here I'm going to plug in 4 in for x. And so this is equal to 5 times 4 minus 3. So that's equal to 20 minus 3, which is equal to 17. Okay, now the next one, it would be I need to find h of 4. And h of 4 simply says, again, just like in the previous problem, well, plug 4 into x in h. So this is going to be 3 plus 4 all over 7. And then we have 3 plus 4 is 7 divided by 7. And 7 divided by 7 is equal to 1. Okay, so here I have my two function values, so f and h both evaluated at 4, at x equals to 4. So then I can now go back to my original problem, and so I'm going to replace f of 4 with what I calculated down here. So f of 4 is equal to 17, and then minus h of 4, which I found down here, was 1. And so then this is equal to 16. So 16 is what f minus h of 4 is equal to. Okay, so good job there. We're going to find what f of g of x is. Okay, so the first thing is realizing, what does f of g of x mean? Well, that simply means plug g of x, the whole function g of x, inside of f of x. So this is equal to f of g of x. Okay, and now I know what g of x is equal to. G of x is equal to x squared plus 2. So I'm going to replace the g of x with x squared plus 2, and everything else stays the same. So this is going to now be f of x squared plus 2. So what does that mean? Well, that means plug x squared plus 2 inside of every x in f of x. So then this is equal to 5. And now notice, instead of x, I'm going to plug in all of g of x, which is all of x squared plus 2. So notice I am plugging g of x inside of f of x. So then this is 5 times x squared plus 2, and then minus 3. And now we need to simplify this a little bit. So I'll distribute the 5 inside of the parentheses. So this is 5x squared plus 5 times 2 is 10 minus 3. And then this is equal to 5x squared. And then 10 minus 3, that's going to be positive 7. And that's my answer. Now the next one, so we're going to do some more function composition. So now we're going to do, let's do it with a different color. Let's do black. Now we're going to do h of g of x. Now this is the same thing as we did earlier. We're plugging g inside of h now. So this is now going to be h of g of x. And just like we did in the previous problem, we're going to replace g of x with what g of x is equal to. G of x is equal to x squared plus 2. And so since h of x is 3 plus x over 7, well then now h of x is going to be 3 plus, and then instead of x, we're going to leave a spot there to put all of g of x, and all of that is going to be over 7. So it's just like the original h of x, except that instead of x, we plug in all of g of x, which is x squared plus 2. Okay, and then now if we simplify, we would get, so 3 plus 2, that's 5. So I'm going to write it, so that's going to be 5 plus x squared all over 7. Now for the next problem, we're asked to transform g of x so that the graph is placed 6 units to the right and 7 units down. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, to transform 6 units to the right, what you need to do is you would need to subtract 6 from the x portion of the function. Okay, that's going to move it 6 to the right. If you wanted to move it to the left, you would add 6. And then to move it down, what you need to do is you need to subtract 7 from the entire function. Okay, so now what does that mean when we want to do both? Well, we need to perform both of those transformations. So let's do that. So we're going to call our new function capital G of x. Okay, and I'm going to write down g of x, which is x squared plus 2. But instead of the x, I'm going to just put a parentheses there. Okay, and so now let's perform the two transformations. So I'm going to put, instead of x, I'm going to write down x minus 6, because that will shift it 6 units to the right. And then to shift it 7 down, I need to subtract 7 from the entire function. And so notice this leaves me with x minus 6 squared, and then plus 2 minus 7, that's equal to negative 5. So this is my new function after performing those two transformations. And now for the last problem, what we want to do is find inverses of the two functions, f of x and h of x. So let's do the inverse of f of x. So we're going to do this in several steps. So the first step is going to be, so you take f of x, which is 5x minus 3. The first step is to replace f of x with y, so that y is equal to 5x minus 3. Okay, the second step is to swap x's and y's. So this y is going to be replaced by x, and this x is going to be replaced by y. And then everything else stays the same. So this is equal to 5 and then y minus 3. So notice the only thing I did is swap the x's and the y's. The next step is to solve for y. Okay, so now I'm trying to solve for y. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Okay, so then I have x plus 3 is equal to 5y. And then the last step to solve for y is going to be to divide by 5 both sides. Okay, so then what I end up with is that x plus 3 over 5 equals to y, or y is equal to x plus 3 over 5. This is my inverse. Now the last step I need to do is just to rewrite this. Instead of y equals 2, I'm going to write the inverse notation, which is f to the minus 1 of x. So this is f inverse of x is equal to x plus 3 all over 5. And that's the inverse of f of x. Okay, so now let's do the inverse of h of x. So h of x is 3 plus x all over 7. Now we're going to perform the same exact steps here. We're going to first replace h of x with y. So y is equal to 3 plus x all over 7. Okay, now the next step is to swap x's and y's. So this y is going to turn into an x, this x is going to turn into a y, and everything else is going to stay the same. So I still have the 3 plus and then all over 7. Now the next step is to solve for y, and so the first thing I'm going to do then is to multiply by 7 both sides so that I can cancel those 7's. So then I end up with 7x equals to 3 plus y. And then I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. And that's going to leave me with 7x minus 3 is equal to y. Now the last two steps, I'm just going to rewrite it as y equals to 7x minus 3. And then replace the y with f inverse of x is equal to 7x minus 3. And now we're done finding the inverses.